Money FM 89.3, the best of Saturday mornings. International News Review.
All right, we do got to get on with our international news review. Sorry about that, Steve, but we have so much to talk about. And sadly, we have to talk about war or coming war first. After airstrikes on Iran. Iran has struck back at Israel, strikes over Jerusalem and missiles rather over Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. Steve, we're having a good laugh here this morning, but we really do have to turn serious. This is a very, very deadly serious topic that we have to discuss first on the International News Review.
And right now we have no idea how this is going to turn out. This could turn out to be really a complete and total victory, not only for Israel, but for the Iranian people. It could be a complete win. It could also be the start of a new war, or maybe maybe we're in war now, but an escalated, really serious war where tens of thousands, if not more, people die, both in Israel and Iran, and who knows where it will spill out.
How do the Iranian people win on this?
Because the Iranian people are completely in utterly under literally a dictatorship. And this is a government that suppresses its people. It's a government that kills its own people. It's a government that does mass arrests of its own people. And if this leads to the Iranian people overthrowing their government, because the Iranian government has never been weaker, arguably, since 1979. And if this leads to that, and this leads to Iran getting into some type of government of the people, I'm not going to call it a democracy, but whatever it may be, and we see it happening a bit in Syria right now, and we see it happening maybe in Lebanon right now, and maybe we can see this happening in Iran right now. And this would be a win, as they say, not only for Israel and not only a military victory for Israel, but a win for the Iranian people and a win for peace in the Middle East. I mean, a lot of the attacks you see are Iranian proxies. You see it in the sea, Red Sea right now with the Houthis. You saw it in them backing up Iraq and in Syria and in Lebanon. So this could be a total game changer, or it could be a disaster.
I'm glad. I'm very, very glad.
That pretty sums it up, right?
You added the last line because I can hear our listeners. I know this is a very contentious issue, but the idea that this could be perceived as a win for Iran. Hang on the night we've got almost 100 dead in Iran, and that the liberators, to follow that logic, the liberators are somehow the Israelis.
Nope.
The Israelis who are annihilating Gaza, being accused of committing acts of genocide. I don't think there's going to be too many Iranians this morning saying, "Thank you, Israel."
Not what I said at all, Neil.
No,
I never said that. I said,
how is it a win for Iran?
If the Iranian people can take their government back from a government that has been mistreating them for years and years and will, murder women just because they're not wearing what they want them to wear. If they take over their government and they can run their government for themselves and they can make their country a better place for themselves, that is what they have to do. Israel can't do that for them.
No, but
no one can do that
I've
for
got
them.
to follow on. The inference is still that Israel would be the people putting them in
No,
that position.
it's the Iranian government that's put themselves in that position. And it's the Iranian government that has overspent on this nuclear program. It's the Iranian government that's treated the people the way it's treated them. It's this Iranian government that has set up proxies that have caused death and destruction all over the Middle East. And if Israel is taking advantage of a weakened Iran, which it is doing right now, and it is taking advantage of a situation with who we have in the White House, that doesn't mean that Israel is part of this, but this has got to come from the Iranian people. And if you look at what happened and how this attack happened, which is, you couldn't write a spy novel that would be believable of how Israel has been able to set up all of these agents within the country of Iran. They cannot do that by themselves. They can only do that with the Iranian people and the Iranian government.
Fair enough, Steve. But we're talking about down the road. I think we have to focus on what's actually happening today, yesterday and today, which is massive airstrikes on Iranian targets and now counterstrikes headed toward Israel, with the Iranians saying that the U.S. is absolutely complicit in this, and the U.S. is now in the sight, in the crosshairs, with all of the troops, tens of thousands of troops stationed in that part of the world. Let's talk now about today, what's happening today.
I'm going to disagree with the word you used, massive. It was not massive. The Israelis were extraordinarily...
It was the biggest strike they've ever done on
78
Iran.
so far.
The biggest strike they've ever done.
But it was an extraordinarily targeted strike. They didn't go after any political leaders. They didn't go after any economic targets. They didn't go after any energy infrastructure.
It's the largest strike that Israel has ever achieved on Iran.
And just
in terms of bombs.
And just to add, 78, because we have to give context, 78 people dead so far, it will go up, 320 wounded, 100 sites targeted. Civilians would have died in that number. We know that.
They would, but the Israelis they did not do a massive retaliation. I mean, a massive attack against the Iranian people. They were extremely targeted. They went after the military high command. They went after the senior commanders. They went after the nuclear scientists. That is what they went after. And you could see where they would target a floor of a building. They didn't try and take down an entire building. They took down the floor that they were in. Of course, it was a military attack, but this was not an attack against Iranian people. It was an attack against the government and the military and the nuclear capabilities that they have, and they went after the nuclear sites. It could go against the Iranian people if this escalates. If Iran goes and tries to wipe out Tel Aviv, and if they try and wipe out Jerusalem, and then we are going to be there. That's what I'm saying. We know right now that we've got a very targeted attacks going on between the two sides, and it can get massive. It is not massive yet.
But just to add to that, there's a school of thought that says, bringing Donald Trump into the conversation, his failure to restrain or even condemn Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu with what's going on in Gaza has almost emboldened Netanyahu in the region to do this. What would you say to that?
I would say it's not just Trump. No one has really gone and said to Israel, you can't do this. They have said, you have to protect yourselves. You have to protect yourself against. And this is what led to this, because when Hamas got weakened, when Hezbollah basically got wiped out, and then when the Israelis were able to go after Iran in the last two attacks to wipe out their ability to take out their anti-aircraft systems, then the Israelis were then able to go after the nuclear pieces. So it has been, this doesn't mean it's going to end well, but this is not Trump giving the green light to Netanyahu. This is everybody saying Iran is a serious problem. When I say everybody, a lot of countries in the Middle East, Iran is a serious problem. They are a threat to regional stability. And if Israel is going to do this in the context of defending themselves, we're going to watch and see what happens after that.
There's the story about, preemptive strikes and can you attack somebody when they haven't attacked you first? That whole discussion seems to have been lost years ago. But that was a common red line for many countries in decades gone by. We can spend another show talking about that because we don't honestly have time to get into the depth of that. Looking for, just briefly, Steve, what should we look for in the next few days? More strikes on Israel, obviously. Do you think there will be suicide bomber attacks on U.S. bases in the region or on shipping, or what does that look like in terms of Iran's possible current capability?
Yeah. First thing what's going to happen in Iran? What is going to happen with the government? What's going to happen with the Iranian people? And then, so you have to watch that, and then you have to watch, is this going to start escalating on both sides? And is Israel going to come back and go after the Iranian people and go after the economics and the energy infrastructure like Putin is doing in Ukraine? That is not what Israel's doing. So those are all the things you're going to watch right now. This could fork in one of two ways that are that could be disastrous, or it could be long-term, leading to what would be the best for the Iranian people.
And what could it possibly mean for Singapore, both in terms of, you're already seeing the ramped-up rhetoric I'm seeing on social media right now, both sides. What could it mean for politically, economically, and from a business standpoint for Singapore?
If this stays a contest between the government of Israel and the government of Iran, it will mean less. If this gets to get into religious implications, then it's going to mean very different things, throughout. You see, as U.S. businesses, you see boycotts previously in Malaysia in particular against companies like Starbucks and McDonald's over what was happening in Gaza. So there could be significant business and economic boycotts against U.S. interests. We never saw that here in Singapore. You didn't see it in most countries, but you certainly saw it in Malaysia. So that is what you need to watch. Is this going to be government to government? Is this going to be about nuclear capabilities, or is it going to spread beyond that?
All right. We need to move forward to our next story, the tragic Boeing 787 Dreamliner crash in Ahmedabad on Thursday, bound for Gatwick in London, 242 people on board. It appears that there was just one survivor from seat 11A. What should we be looking for? We don't know what caused the crash yet, the first fatality on a Dreamliner, but what should we be looking for in the process now, Steve, as we go forward?
Well, I mean, like when you have a crash of this type, there's kind of four different possibilities. I mean, the one is pilot error. A second is Boeing or some other manufacturer. It could be the manufacturer of the jet engines, but it could be something that was in the aircraft itself. It could be the maintenance that Air India had. So they didn't do proper maintenance, that the plane was fine, but they didn't maintain it properly. The fourth, it could be some external event. An external event could be a bird strike, could be a bomb or some other missile, terrorist attack, whatever it may be. But certainly when you're looking at the video and you see that the wheels were still locked down for takeoff, and they weren't retracted yet, and you saw where the flaps were. Now we're getting a little bit beyond my area of expertise, but that there was something wrong. And so, what caused that? Was that the pilots, or was that a mechanical failure? Was it a structural failure? And we should know a lot as soon as they get those black boxes, because what you will hear immediately is the communication between the pilot and the co-pilot. And when you hear that communication, if you hear the pilot say, do this, and the co-pilot doesn't, you're going to know pretty quickly if it's pilot error or not. Yeah. So that's what we're going to wait to see.
Well, there was a Mayday signal sent almost immediately, wasn't there? So they knew within seconds of taking off something was wrong. Do we have based on your experience in aviation, a rough time frame for when answers will start to reveal themselves?
If it's something as simple as pilot error, that could reveal itself quickly. Now, they're going to want to look at everything else, and you want to look at the training the pilots received. You want to look at the history of the pilots. You want to look at their medical records. So there's all of these things
and
that
the
you're going to want to look at.
Flight data recorders, of course.
But that the voice recorders will be significant because it was right at takeoff, and so that you could have you may know quickly. Now, you're supposed to have so many redundancies on aircraft. So if one thing doesn't work, that there's going to be a backup to it. So it's going to take time to go through all of those redundancies. I don't know if there's any. And then what makes this crash worse, of course, and I actually flew in and out of that airport not that long ago. And, when you fly out of Changi, you fly out of, Narita, you fly out of, almost any aircraft in any airport of the United States, you're kind of in the middle of nowhere. I mean, there's a lot of buffer between the runway
and civilization.
And there isn't at this airport. So that made it even worse in terms of the tragedy that's going to happen.
I just want to ask one positive out of the negatives. The survivor, the miraculous story of the survivor in seat 11A. Statistics does show, according to experts, if you sit within 5 rows of a serviceable exit seat, you have a greater chance of survival. Doesn't mean you will survive, but you have a greater chance. In your history of aviation, have you heard of this before?
No, it's not true.
This is coming from an expert on The Guardian. I'm not making this up.
Well, no. I will say everything that I have ever read or have been told on this is that it's pure chance. When you're if you crash land, and that's different. But when you're talking about one person surviving a disaster like this, it's just pure chance where you're seeing.
Yeah, Mr. Viwash Kumar Ramesh, a British national, by the way, 38 years old, seat 11A. He was near an emergency exit. But he said the door broke open, so they weren't quite sure if that means he had to actually move the door if it fell out.
Or he kicked a hole.
But he literally walked himself to the ambulance, which is just unbelievable.
And without getting technical, he was beside a more protected area around the wing box or something. So it was a split-second delay in the fuselage exploding where he was. It's extraordinary. At least a positive, if you can call it that, story to come out of this.
All right, let's move on. Let's go to L.A. The protests, we know last couple weekends, and last weekend, I should say, where the National Guard was called in. Protesters were trying to block ICE officials from doing some deportations of what they claimed were illegal immigrants. Then Donald Trump not only activated the National Guard against the preference of the California governor, Gavin Newsom, but also then a day or two later activated several hundred Marines to come in. Steve, it's not illegal for the president to do it, but it is highly, highly unusual.
Well, first, the United States now has more troops deployed in Los Angeles than in Iraq and Syria. I mean, this is astounding to think that there are active duty troops. And no, I don't think the president has the authority to do this. He does not have the authority to call out the National Guard. There is no justification for doing this. He has to request the governor to do this, and it has to go through things. And I think the court will find relatively quickly that the president doesn't have the authority, which is why we are having these No Kings marches in the United States Saturday, U.S. time. And so this started not just in Los Angeles, but Los Angeles is the starting point. But this is spreading throughout the country because Donald Trump has kept his word. He is doing exactly what he said he was going to do during the campaign. He said he wanted to deport 10 million people. And the only way you're going to do that is to massively get people who have done nothing wrong beyond coming to the United States and either overstaying a visa or coming without proper rights or having a certain visa that then got yanked back. And he's arresting all of them, and he's going after people who are now have done nothing wrong, and the American people in certainly significant numbers are protesting this. And now Donald Trump is saying, you're not allowed to protest against me, basically, anymore. And you get the Secretary of Defense saying, it's my job to ensure there's law and order. That is not the job of the military of the United States. That's the job of the police in the United States to ensure law and order. So we are in a very different situation than we've had in the United States. I mean, 100 years, maybe more, that we've had a situation like this.
The National Guard was called out in '92 in Los Angeles during the riots
by the governor, not by the president. I'm saying there was no physical violence justification now to call out the National Guard. This could have been, and was being handled by the police. Yep. It didn't need the National Guard, and by Donald Trump overriding the governor, calling out the National Guard, and not only calling out the National Guard, bringing in active duty Marines into the United States.
That is a very new escalation of this.
We are in a different situation in the U.S. It's a really tenuous situation.
Now, the president can use the Alien Insurrection Act from the 1800s to call up the National Guard. He has that ability. Like you say, there are very limited circumstances, but it's not technically strictly against the law for him to do that.
It is if there's no insurrection. If there's no insurrection, you can't use the military.
This is a phrase that's in the eye of the beholder, right?
No, there's legal definitions of insurrection. This is not an eye of the beholder.
Well, he was claiming that government officials were being attacked by protesters, and that's the basis under which he has activated those troops.
That is not an insurrection, if that's even true, that they were getting attacked. If you're talking about throwing a rock at a policeman, is not an insurrection. It is not in the eye of the beholder.
Certainly the courts will look at that and decide what it is.
We both know this is classic Trump playbook anyway. What have the protests actually done for Trump? They've diverted attention away from his rift with Elon Musk. They've diverted attention away from the stalling of his big, beautiful tax and spending bill. Steve, isn't this really just another episode of the daily White House reality TV show. Fresh episodes, fresh drama, fresh scandal every day. This is classic Trump playbook.
Except, again, it is going into a place that the United States has almost, in a way, never gone into. We do not have military parades like they do in France. I mean, this isn't like, obviously, they do them in Russia, they do them in China, but they do them in France as well, having massive military parades. But that's not what we do in the United States. We do not march our troops up and down Pennsylvania Avenue. What he's doing now is very un-American. And that show of force, in which he said, if you protest against me, we are going to come after you. I mean, that is a violation of the First Amendment. So we are in a really different situation in the United States now than we've been in decades.
Just to follow up on that, un-American for whom? Because lots of folks I've seen on television, on his side, his base, they're happy. He's clamping down on the illegal migration issue. He's dealing with rioters. He's dealing with vandals who don't want their shops looted, people who don't want graffiti all over their walls and their streets. There are many, many people on his side of the divide, his base, who are very happy with what's happening right now.
Yeah, about 38% of Americans are happy where he is, and 60% are not. And so, yeah, I'll give you that 38% of the people think that what he's doing is right. Now, I think if he continues to do this over time, those 38%, that number is going to come down, because now all of a sudden the farmers and the hospitality work and the hospitality sector is saying we can't survive without these people you're deporting, and we're going to have serious shortages in food, in aggregate, and for what people can eat if he goes down this path. And he seemed to say, we're gonna come out with an order on this, and then his entire administration, or the MAGA part of his administration, said, no, we're not. We're going to keep deporting and deporting and deporting. So I don't think, you may be right that 38% Americans right now support him. I think that number is going to go down if he continues down this playbook.
All right, we got to move on to our final segment, which is a look back at two musical greats, Brian Wilson, the visionary creative spirit behind the Beach Boys, and also Sly Stone, the funky frontman of Sly and the Family Stone. Both passed away this week at the age of 82. Two very different musical genres, but two musicians who had absolute impact on their audiences. Let's talk about first about Brian Wilson.
You know, Bruce, no last name needed, of course, the boss. Bruce called the Beach Boys the greatest American band ever. And I wouldn't have said that. I don't know who I would have said if you had asked me that. And then it got me to thinking, are the Beach Boys the greatest American band ever?
Well, there's not much competition.
Because we have a lot more solo artists than
yes.
right? We have a lot more. Or we even have Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band, right? Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. But I think they may be the greatest American band ever. And a lot of it now, you think of the Beach Boys, do you think of the more kind of a novelty act in a way, right? The surf music. But you go in any ranking of the greatest albums of all time, Pet Sounds which is the Beach Boys' masterpiece,
right,
is typically number 2 to Sgt. Pepper's, and it was that rivalry, and not in a genius rivalry between McCartney and Lennon on one side and Brian Wilson on the other, that drove both of them to be greater. It was when the Beatles came out with Rubber Soul that drove Brian Wilson to do Pet Sounds. Pet Sounds drove the Beatles to do Sgt. Pepper's. So looking back on it and then reading everything, they may be the greatest American band ever.
Well, God Only Knows is the song that Paul McCartney frequently says is the one song he wishes he'd written. It was played at his wedding, I believe, and it is a song that's touched by angels. I mean, it is I've been playing it non-stop for the last 2 days. God Only Knows. And it's less than 3 minutes, as all great songs should be.
Yep. It's
an absolute masterpiece. The arrangements, the singing, the choir, the lyrics, the melody. It is an absolutely heartbreakingly perfect melancholic love song. It is just
what a build-up. What's the name
genius.
of the song?
God Only Knows. I said it already. Yeah, I said it twice.
I thought you were saying God Only Knows. That was the song.
Yeah. He's still doing his dad jokes.
And
that's in just what Brian Wilson did, and just what a genius he was, right? I mean, he was the composer, he was the singer, he was the producer, he was the arranger. No one really had that level of musical genius across the board. I mean, you could argue, obviously, Dylan is a lyricist. I mean, won the Pulitzer Prize. Paul Simon's maybe in that category, but Brian Wilson may be by himself in terms of all of those things, was the greatest American musician.
Yeah, but I want to give a shout out to Sly Stone before we run out of room.
Let's
One
do
of the
that.
first multiracial bands that straddled both white and black communities. The first song that my daughter ever knew by heart was Dance to the Music. She loved that song dearly. I think they were a great, funky, early 70s, groundbreaking band.
I was going to say, and the song, my favorite song of theirs, "Everyday People."
Great
right?
song. Yeah. Great
song. The line from there, is different strokes for different folks. We got to live together.
Yeah.
Right? And this came out of the protest era, and we need that now. Yeah. We need Sly Stallone and his type of music.
Sly Stone.
Sly Stone. Sly and the Family Stone. Right? We need Sly, and we need that type of music. And thinking now, because we are back in that era. We're not in the Beach Boys era of '62 to '66 when they were at their peak. We're in
the '69 to '75 era.
And it's we need that type of
absolutely.
Reminding.
Sly and the Family Stone and Brian Wilson both passed away earlier this week at age 82. Steve, thank you so much. Great to be with you. You will be back again next week.
And I will be back with you for an hour.
You will be back with me for an hour. Neil will be traveling, and so you will get more Steve Okun than you probably can. Well, I don't know. Anyway. Okay, we got to run, folks. Time to pay some bills. Thanks, Steve.
To listen to more great interviews, download our podcasts at audio.sg or download the audio app. That's AWEDIO, audio at the App Store and Google Play.